Friendship is.
And the reason I know about it is that I got a call to just saying we would like you to do a voiceover, and it's for and fine. And when is it? And, okay, send me the material. And I looked at the material, and the material was really quite nicely. It was really good. And I could tell that they wanted a very naughty character, so those are always fun to do. I did it. 3 months later, and believe me, what happens is that you do it, and at the end of the day, you have by that time sort of forgotten, what was that story? And then certainly by the end of the week, you have just forgotten the experience. So 3 months later, I go down to my computer, and on my personal email are maybe about 300 emails.
How did they get your first one?
Well, very clever. And I ended up spam, this is how is it possible? And I started reading it, and I said, and I'm looking at it, and my little pony. And I called my wife and I go, what do you know about My Little Pony? And she said, well, it's a show that you voiced about 3 months ago. And it's a cartoon for little girls. And I said, well, let me tell you something. These aren't little girls. And that weekend, I was going to a Star Trek convention, I think up in Calgary or something like that. And a bunch of guys came up to me. And they weren't all guys. They were, guys and girls came up to me. And they wanted me to sign something about Discord and My Little Pony. I'm like, oh my God, why do you watch this show? And I got some really nice responses. And then I went to conventions actually that week. And a friend of mine had come over previous to me meeting Eddie Brony. He had come over to the house and he makes documentaries. And he had come over and I told him the story. We sort of chortled about it like, oh God. And then I met these people and I went, oh, these are nice people. And he had said, do you want to do a documentary? And I said, no. And then he sent me a link to a Fox News Brony. The latest in the cultural, are a bunch of homosexuals who live at home on food stamps and disability, so that they can watch cartoons in their parents' basement.
Oh my God! Wow.
And I got angry about that because personally, I happen to feel that Fox News has done more to sort of pervert the truth in this country. Saw these people, these bronies, as being afraid to risk the ridicule of watching the show, which is sort of intended for little girls, okay? But then when you look at the show, it's about being kind and generous and loyal and friendly. And I thought, why would we be saying bad things about people who watch a show like that? What is it about our culture that has gotten it so that that's okay and that you can go on television and make fun of it? So I called up my friend and I said, you're on. Let's make this documentary. Good for you. So it's about kind of class, and I think it's quite wonderful. So I hope you'll see it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, John. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with Nikola?
Oh, on Legend? What? Well, the first time which I heard about Legend was Michael Piller, who wrote Star Trek, called me up and he said, John, I have a show. It's ready to go. It's 13 guaranteed, which is a very unusual thing. It's not a pilot. So it's 13 guaranteed. You really perk up your ears. And I've written this character for you. And I hope that you like it. I'm going to send a messenger over right now. Would you read it right away and tell me if you like it? And if you do, could you come in tomorrow and audition for it. Wait a minute, I thought you wrote it. So in any case, I did go in the next day and audition for it. And ultimately I got it. I really liked the character. For those of you who don't know, I don't know if it was the first, but it was a steampunk. It was steampunk. It was sort of a Jules Vernean Western. And I played Nicodemus Lake. No, I played Bartok. And it was, it was based on the character of Nikola Tesla, and who was the great, brilliant, genius electrical engineer who essentially here is Nikola Tesla, all the lights, all the I mean, radio he did, there were so many things that he was involved in. Okay. Yeah.
Hello. My question is, out of all the roles you've done, excluding Q, because we know you're going to say it, because it's Star Trek, what role would you like to be remembered for the most?
Well, I don't know about roles that I'd like to be remembered for. I think the last sort of major role that you saw was on Breaking Bad. And it was a very sad show. I mean, I played a father whose daughter was a drug addict. And I was very, very attentive, very caring, and completely in the dark about what was going on. And it was really nice, and it was a really sad show. I mean, a sad storyline. But what was sort of nice about it, and this happens every once in a while, on Star Trek it happens that people will come up, they don't say anything to me personally, but they'll say, Star Trek, you made them want to become a scientist. But Star Trek did. I had some young people come up to me and say, that really touched me because I now know what my parents were going through. The show that I liked probably the most was Man and Superman, which was George Bernard Shaw, and it was not film. And if you want to read a brilliant play, and if you want to read, I played Jack Tanner, the lead in it, and it's every word that came out of my mouth, I believe. And it's so much fun when you have that experience where you go, it is being said so much better. What I feel is being said so much better than I could say it, and it's so much fun to be able to say it right now. So that was something that I really enjoyed. Yeah.
I love, first of all, how diversified you are. You don't find a lot of actors that can do that. They can play all different kinds of parts of media as well as. So forgive me for asking a Star Trek question, but was Q intended to be a recurring role, or was it something that it was just so awesome when you played it that they decided to bring you back?
Well, I don't know whether it was so awesome, but it was not intended. Not only was it not intended as a recurring role, it wasn't actually intended in the first show. You can see a rather jagged seam in that first show. What it was is that Gene wanted to start off without an MOW. He didn't want a pilot sort of thing. And the network did. And he hemmed and hawed, and finally, at the very last minute, wrote an extension of the show that was the 1 hour. He extended it. I think that probably what he did is that he probably, and I didn't know this at the time because I was not really a Star Trek fan. I was a fan of the movies, but as I said yesterday, I didn't watch very much television, and I still don't. So in any case, the idea is that he was going to write something new, and he had to do it under a fair amount of pressure. And I think what he did is that he went back and thought a lot about what had worked before, and the character of Trelane had worked before. So he was giving it sort of that there is connective tissue there. Maybe 2 or 3 years after doing the first Star Trek, my first Star Trek, somebody gave me a videotape of that episode, and I went, oh, it's pretty similar. Yeah. Next.
Every voice fan has a dream, like either play or maybe something that they would want to either write, direct, or star in. Do you have any dream role or play you would like to do, something that you haven't done yet that you'd like to?
I read, because almost everything is ahead, is in the future for a commercial actor like myself, who's not in a repertory company and the plays have already been written, and are we going to do Lear this year? Are we going to do what? Because everything is forward. Mostly what we look for, what I look for, is a good script in a nice situation where it's good, where it's calm, and you can actually do your work. Where it's really attentive. There's an attention to detail. I finished a little movie 6 months ago, which I've heard. I mean, that's the problem with movies, that you don't know where they go. Which is, I play a marriage counselor, and it starts right off the bat with me saying, so where's your husband? Is he in the car? Is he in the car? Did you lock him in the car? Is he in the car waiting for you? Where's your husband? And I go, wow, this is pretty impressive psychiatry. And it turns out that it's this very interesting story where it turns out that her husband actually died in 9/11. And the thing at the very end, we discovered that my wife died in 9/11. And this is a relationship that the two of us need. And she keeps on coming back every week, and it's this sort of relationship. Well, it was a good enough script to work on, and then the way in which it was shot was really great. You could sort of make up the lines a little bit, you could improvise a little bit, you could really get into it. More often than not, television shows, at least, mostly, are absolutely letter perfect. You have one take, anything after one take, people are kind of like, oh God, how long is this going to take? It's a tremendous amount of tension. And I just don't like it anymore. I used to be good at it, and I'm just tired of it. I just kind of, and we were talking last night about just that. What actors usually who are my age and what have you will talk about that. We'll just go, it's just not as much fun. And so I'm looking for fun projects and afford not to do the other ones. So I feel like I'm in a good position. Yeah. No, don't applaud.
I just love you. But good noise.
You could have applauded.
I had a chance to meet you at a convention about 17 years ago, and it was a pretty funny moment when you tried to get on the elevator, and a really rabid fan caught you before you got on the elevator, and pretty much harassed you to the point where you had to get off the elevator and take the stairs instead. So my question is, do you have a really memorable crazy fan moment that really just sticks out in your mind that you think about once in a while, about just how crazy?
I try to get them out of my You know the one about the one in which the New York City one I filled out when the convention comes. You know that story?
No.
I'm walking down the street in New York, and the blocks are short blocks. And I had gone, I had gotten up on it, and you hear sort of scanning, and walking towards me, always at the end of the block, but coming towards me, is a really, really unsavory looking guy. Big guy. So he had to be bigger than I am, and so I'm 6'3", I guess, and so he was just huge and really unsavory. And I just thought, I'll just come over here, and he moved out. We're keep on coming. I move over this way, and he moved out. And now we lock eyes. And I'm like, I'm gonna get involved. And he comes up to me. Now I've stopped. My hands are out of my pocket, and I've sort of bent my knees in anticipation of God knows what. And he comes up really close. I mean, that close. Are you cute? I'm not going to get mugged. Maybe it's worse. I go, yeah. Can you bring people back from the dead? How maybe I am going to get one. I said, well, only people I like. Cool. And then walked on.
Good morning. Welcome to New Orleans.
Hey, Robin.
As track fan, you have a very distinctive voice, and it's always fun. Me and my group of geeks, we try to pick out what narrations you've done, what voiceovers you've done. Your latest in the Assassin's Creed series. My question is, what has been your favorite either voiceover work or narration work that you've done? I made you think.
Well, I'm thinking of one that you could actually go and see without having to pay any money for. And that is go on YouTube and I do The Raven. Okay? And you have to watch it quietly because it's just me into the camera. I love doing text work. It's fun. And as a little boy, I didn't know how to read. And I didn't learn how to read when everybody else did. And I ended up in the 6th grade. They really it came to roost with 5 F's and a D. That got my parents' attention. And I had to repeat that year. And one of the things in which I ended up doing is that concurrently with that, I had this sort of sideline of being a thief. Are there any young kids? I had a sideline of being sort of a thief, and I didn't steal LPs, and I didn't steal candy, and I didn't steal, whatever things that kids usually take. I stole books. And because I had a 2-hour detention that was a 2-hour every day for the entire year detention. Because I was a naughty boy. I worked with Ruby, the janitor, and I had complete access to the library. And I began taking, a book here and a book there to sort of grace my desk at home. Until finally, I used to carry like this many books down to the train station, 54th Street, get onto the train struggling and having, older moms and dads, mostly dads who are coming back from work, helping me to my seat, thinking that they were in the presence of sort of a young Voltaire. Not realizing that I couldn't read this stuff. And And I would get it around my house. I would sit down in my. You talk about psychological problems. I'd sit around in a circle and I'd look at these books. And now I have to say, I had good taste because my books were like Gibbon's Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, or Burke's Second Treatise on Government. I mean, it's all like that, and Joyce. The complete collection of James Joyce. I couldn't read it. I would open it up, and because I am really dyslexic, it would just be too many words. It was a block of words, and but in that one of those halls, I brought home the Golden Treasury of Poetry. Do any of you remember that? It was a thick book like this. You would open it up and there were pictures in it and drawings and little poems that sometimes were only about this big. They were all really manageable, and that's how I started. That's how I started to teach myself how to read. And so the whole notion of text work I've always loved it. And then I was part of a troupe, I don't do it very much anymore, which was LA Theater Works, which was completely, doing radio shows. And then Leonard Nimoy and I created Alien Voices, which was again all this reading. So those are the things that stand out to me. I have to say that Assassin's Creed, I haven't played it. I know my kids used to play it, and I thought it was a really great game. But right now, the one which you'll enjoy is Poe's The Raven.
John, you narrated A Christmas Carol last year, right? Did you do a narration from Cobb Mansion? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Christmas Carol.
That's right. Yeah, I never.
So that should be your most latest one other than Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
I got another Star Trek question for you.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the other Star Trek.
What was your favorite scene that you played throughout your minutes?
Oh, I don't know. I can't tell you that, but I'll give you a funny story. The last shot of Next Generation was just Patrick and I. He was done at around 10 o'clock at night on a rainy Thursday night. The show had already closed down. That all the sound stages were gone. I mean the bridge, all that type of stuff was gone. And the sound stage is a little taller than this building, than this room. So we were on a platform about halfway up, and because they wanted to shoot up in this direction, okay, so we're up there, and it was the scene in what was the last show? Oh, good thing. It was the scene where there's the goose. Okay. Part of acting, at least I think that this makes super fun, is that you have to have a secret. Every scene you go in with a secret. I mean, the secret might simply be that you know that the person's fly is open. You don't say anything. So the whole thing you play it going, I know something about you that you don't know. So in any case, I'm going to show it to you like this. I'm doing this, right? And it is a guy on a ladder holding a bucket. Okay. And in the bucket is the goo. So I reach down and I lift up the goo and I go, this, to Patrick, I go, this is good in you, whatever I said. Yeah. But the fun part is that, I am different. is that I do this, and I'm doing it like this, but I'm also moving my hand so that the trick So that's mostly what I'm thinking about. I'm going, I'm getting it. And then we'll finish the scene and go, you. think of all of those things. You have to imagine all of that stuff. And it's just, you're just using a different part of your brain, that's all. I mean, you could do it. It's not difficult to do. I'm not a voiceover actor in the way that some of the, like Tara Strong is, or people like that. They are, they practice different voices. Probably, it wasn't her, but it was with, I was somewhere, I forget where I was, somewhere, having dinner, and there were maybe 4 or 5 voiceover guys there. It was exhausting. They couldn't talk. So what did you do today? Well, what did I do today? And then they get into competitions with each other, and people in the restaurant are looking around. Get out of here. But they practice these voices. I don't do that. I don't do that. I'm not interested in that. I'm envious of the ability that they have, but it's not something that I'll try to get on my own.
You don't need to. Your voice is awesome.
Good.
I got the chance to meet Robert Picardo earlier this year at MegaCon, and I had no idea that you guys had been working together in the Harvard and everything. I'd love to hear more about the collaboration that you guys have been working on.
Well, which collaboration?
I was something. Aren't you working with something like Alien Voices, where you were working
with symphony orchestras?
Yes.
Okay. My father was with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and so I grew up with going to the orchestra all the time. And my first experience of a narrator, although he was more than a narrator, was watching Danny Kaye. I thought, it's fantastic. I was a little boy, and I thought, I would love to do something like that. Well, I had my opportunity when somebody, and it might have been Patrick, well, in any case, somebody fell out of doing the Peer Gynt. So I did Peer Gynt with the LA Phil and then the New York Philharmonic. Now, I was very fortunate in that I've done narrations with the major orchestras here in Canada. And after I did a bunch of those, there was a conductor who came up to me in New York, and he said, I'd like you to do something in Pasadena. What would you want to do? And I had been thinking about it, and I thought, these narrations are really thin. I bet you that I could do a whole Midsummer Night's Dream where you really had a sense of the story of Midsummer Night's Dream. So they were almost like operas. So he said, absolutely. So I moved the orchestra to take up a diagonal on the stage. And then I hired, 75 people. I had dancers who were the fairies. I had a chorus that I had like the Woods. I had wonderful actors in it, singers and what have you. And that was my first venture. Then after that I did Romeo and Juliet, which was, I stripped down the play to, in Romeo and Juliet, the only people who care about Romeo and Juliet, So, and then there are 2 necessary plot points, which is the death of Tybalt and the drinking of the poison. So I had 2 actors, 2 singers who were sort of their doppelganger, and 2 dancers. And they did the entire show, and I used 11 or 12 different composers. So now, again, this is an hour and a half on stage. And I did a bunch of those, Bourgeois Gentlemen, a bunch of them. Then I was doing the children's concerts for the LA Phil, and they asked me to create a series of what I consider to be didactic, more serious things. So I wrote plays and events for them. And I hired, at that point, I began hiring. I hired Bob Twain to do it. So I would hire the actors who you know and I know to do those things. I'm not doing them anymore because I went and started directing opera, and I just would rather be sailing.
Since we only have 5 minutes, and if we could segue into that, I understand you're on a major undertaking right now with a boat.
I've always sailed, and as strange as this may sound, when I was younger, I used to put myself to sleep at night by being in a storm at night in a boat, locking everything up and battening down the hatches, as it were, climbing into a bunk, strapping myself in, and just going, well, what happens is going to happen. And by the time I went through that process, I would fall asleep. When I would tell this to other people, they'd go, it sounds like the most stressful thing in the world. But I've always enjoyed sailing. And I do have a very nice boat. And I'm outfitting it for a very long trip. And every time I say it, I say it for 2 reasons. One, it's forcing me to go because it's really scary. And there's a part of me that goes, well, I don't know if this is really going to happen. But I'm not going to go alone. That was the one thing that I decided not to do. I'm surrounded. I have 3 circumnavigators who are on the same on the slip next to me. I have a lot of really good people around me, and so they're watching this guy who is just about my weather window for going, my age window for going, just getting to the end. So I either have to do it or not. So April is when I'm going to push off.
What's your course? Where are you headed?
To the Marquesas, then to the Tuamotus, and ending in the
Is that the South Pacific Micronesia area? Yeah.
Right. Marquesas is the beginning of the French Polynesian chain. And the Marquesas, the Tuamotus, to look it up, it's the largest coral archipelago in the world. And it's nicknamed both the Dangerous Archipelago because Sterling Hayden's boat could still be seen up on the reef there. But it's also known as God's swimming pool because you can hardly, it's only about 2 miles away that you can actually see, these things are just up a little bit above sea level. But you're coming from 3,000-4,000 feet directly into about 30 feet. And all the fish are there. So I don't know, it's a destination.
Awesome. Well, we wish you the best on that trip. You're starting off in April, you said. How long?
What I'm going to do is that I have the spot. Does anybody know what the spot is? Okay. It's a simple little device. And it'll send up a beacon once a day. And maybe what I'll do is that if anybody wants to follow the trip, they can see where
Absolutely. We want to keep track of where you are, what you're doing. And there's a thing called Twitter. If you haven't said on it, you can tweet what you've done, what you've seen.
Well, you know what? The thing is that I don't want to get... I have to have single-side band radio and stuff like that to be able to talk to the boats that are around me. You never see anybody. I did a Hawaii run, and you just never see anybody ever. That's the general thing. They're there. There might be a couple hundred miles away. And to get weather faxes and stuff like that. But I just don't want to know what's going on. And there's a very, very strong admonishment that's made to anyone. My wife something happens back home, you cannot control it because there's nothing you can do about it. I was on a trip where the guy's father had died. We didn't know until, or he didn't know until we arrived in San Francisco. But what was he going to do?
Yeah.
Well, okay, more questions?
Nope, we're ending it.
Oh, okay. One more.
All right, this gentleman right here, take my microphone. You stood up there, very patient. Here you go.
Okay, my question was, and I'm sure someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're one of the only actors to have crossed the Star Trek to Stargate barrier, and I think that's really cool. And both of those shows, obviously, from seeing the panel yesterday, Star Trek, and I get the feeling that Stargate was very similar, have very tight family-like ensemble casts. So I was kind of wondering what it was like to, as a guest star, pop in and out of those communities and be a part of those shows in relation to that kind of a real tight cast.
It's somewhat difficult. I would come on Star Trek once a year, and actually I 6 times, so there was one year which I did. Jonathan used to take me aside and he'd say, "You are our litmus paper, what do you see?" I would give him a rundown. I mean, as you saw, these guys are much tighter than I can be because I just didn't spend the hours that they had together just doing nothing sometimes, hours and hours, weeks, months on end where you're just there. Marina came up to me once when we were shooting, and she said this as a statement, but knowing Marina, it had a little edge attached to it. She said, "You have more lines in one episode than I have in an entire year." And I go, yeah. Maybe. The problem is that when I would come on, it was always a little bit, there were expectations, and they really wanted to be good, and I wanted it to be good. A tremendous amount of dialogue that I usually have to spit out and what have you. So I didn't really get to know these people until this experience. And I'm delighted that they include me in the process. I mean,